reaction to Monumental?
It was a very good film. Anything that exposes the omission of our history that has basically occurred, I believe, deliberately from textbook writers for the past 80 years. David Barton has done some wonderful work in researching this and chronicling this, putting it into his materials, the American Heritage Series, which I have taught and used as material to present these same things, a lot of the same material, not the pilgrims, but more on the founders and what they did in writing our governmental documents and putting together our Constitution. But he has shown that the textbook writers that came along the scene of the 1920s, Charles and Mary Beard, Fairfax Downey, and I believe another guy was Wentworth, they deliberately omitted the godly side of our founding, and sort of like what he was talking about in the Godless Constitution. They deliberately omitted all of the biblical and religious sides of our history. And it's nothing short of just blatant historical revisionism. And it's sold the children of this generation and next generations very short because they don't understand what truly happened. A lot of the adults will understand because they weren't taught it in schools. For 230 years, everything was taught correctly as it actually happened, and how God was involved, and how God was written into our founding documents up until the 1920s and 30s. And so, of course, the people of today don't feel the same way as they did before that time because they don't have all the facts. David Barton has done a very good job of trying to compile those facts. He is hands down the greatest collector of original governmental documents of anybody alive. And for those who've seen him on Glenn Beck, they know how much he has amassed. I have a lot of respect for David Barton. I've met him on 3 different occasions. He is a wonderful man and deserves anybody's attention.
So what do you think would be the most important thing that people should learn about the Founding Fathers and all that is not being taught today?
That they were deeply spiritual men. I mean, they use the words deists to talk about Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin, but the fact of the matter is the deist of today is far different from what they were as deists. They were deeply spiritual men. I mean,
what do you mean by spiritual?
That they believed in God. It was involved in everything they did, and the things they wrote and the actions they took. Benjamin Franklin gave a very impassioned plea during the Constitutional Convention, where he spoke about the fact that if a sparrow can't fall without God's notice, how can the men expect to build a nation? That was not from weak faith. That was from deep faith. He was an advocate for putting the teachings of the Bible into the public classrooms. He was an advocate for defending Christianity against the writings of Thomas Paine and the Age of Reason. He was a deeply spiritual man, as were all of the Founding Fathers, 256 of them. So for the people to say, and unfortunately you hear in the media talking about how godless the Founders were, that's baloney. They were all deeply spiritual men, and they believed in what God said, and they believed in the writings of the Old and the New Testament.
And not just God, but in Jesus Christ.
Absolutely, Jesus Christ. I mean,
I know there's a God in heaven, but he also as a son who came to earth and died for us.
That's exactly right. They talk about Washington. Washington used so many different words for God, the creator of lights. They were all words he got from the Bible about Almighty God. They weren't because he had some kind of a wacky belief or a wacky religion. He was a deeply spiritual man in the God of the Bible, the Old and the New Testament. And the words he used to describe him were absolutely correct terms to refer to God. It wasn't because he had some wacky religion and belief system. All of the Founding Fathers were deeply spiritual. And all one has to do is read their writings, as David Barton has pointed out. If you want to know what they meant by what they put in the Constitution, read their writings on the Constitution. They said it very clearly.
What would you advise people to do in light of all this stuff? What would they do to help fix our nation?
Stop listening to the talking heads on the liberal TV stations and do their own research into documents that were written in the 1800s and 1700s instead of the 1900s. Go back to the original source. Don't look at people's interpretation of those documents, but go back to the source, which is Wall Builders is a great source for those ideas. Google Wall Builders. David Barton has put all those documents out there. All you have to do is go and look.